you need to, or scribble notes, or whatever the case may be. I'll let everybody get, yeah, I don't know if we have copies for every single person, but for sure one per family. There should be enough there. So if you've never done a record book before, like Kyle mentioned, you don't have anything to compare it to. So it actually may be easier for you this year. Those of you that have been doing record books before or for years, there are a couple of significant changes, and so we want to make sure and highlight those as well.
So I get everybody, I want to make sure, I was doing one per family, but I have some extra, so if we need another one.
Anybody else need a handbook?
Oh, I just need one.
No, this is just my
Okay, so just real quickly, some kind of the people kind of look at two big purposes to do record books. One, we want to teach record keeping because you're going to be doing some sort of record keeping your entire life, whether it's for your, personally for your family at home, with your job, even at school. Students are already doing record keeping, and so it's an important lesson to learn early on is how to keep good records. How many of you have livestock projects? So hopefully you're already starting to keep records on what your animal or project weighed maybe when you first got it, what you're feeding it, if you've given it any medications, what its date of birth is. So hopefully you're already starting to keep some records like that. So this is just another form of record keeping related to your projects. The other side, or one other big purpose of 4-H record books that a lot of people enjoy is the competitive side of it. So just like in many of our other 4-H projects, there's a competition involved. If you do not like competition, your book does not have to be judged in the competition. Although most people feel like if I'm going to go to all the time and effort to do a record book, by golly, y'all might as well throw it in there and see how well I do. So, so there's the element of just learning basic record keeping, but then there's also the competitive element as well. And I'm not going to get real in-depth in the competitive element because, again, in the springtime when it's time to really fully assemble your record book, Kyle and probably Ms. Helsher and other volunteers will do a more in-depth training at that point in time in the spring when you're putting together your record books and talk more about the competitive aspect of it. But we just want you to start thinking now about keeping records. So a couple of goals, I'm sorry, I'm placing right in front of the slides for y'all. Okay, so a couple of steps to the record keeping process. Hopefully everybody's done at least that first block, and if you haven't, go home tonight or tomorrow and sit down and do this part, goal setting. Pretty much everyone already either has started working on a project, whether it's a livestock project, a food and nutrition project, a photography project, whatever the case may be. Hopefully you have at least thought about some goals of what you want to accomplish with that project this year. And so ideally at the start of the 4-H year, which started officially September 1st, but sometimes some of you that are getting livestock projects even have them before then, set some goals of what you want to accomplish. Now these shouldn't necessarily be mom and dad goals, these should be 4-H member goals. And so if you, as the 4-H member, your goal is, I just want to be able to show my goat without it getting away from me in the arena, that's okay. Write that down as your goal. If your goal is, I want to be able to bake a homemade peach cobbler by myself by the end of the 4-H year, write that down as your goal. If your goal is, I want to be able to improve my photography skills by learning more about what all those little dials and buttons mean on my camera, write that down as your goal. So talk that through. You should confer with your parents, but your goals should be what you as a 4-H'er would like to accomplish. And it should be written in your words. It's pretty easy to figure out if a 3rd grader writes a really complex goal that maybe that was a mom and dad goal and not a 4-H member goal. So make sure that the 4-H members are contributing to what those goals are. So that really should already have been done at this point. If not, get it done really, really quickly. The next step of record keeping is journaling. So keeping up with your records. Whether it's you keep a spiral somewhere in your house and you write down things as they happen. Some people use a calendar. Some people use mom or dad's phone, an iPad, whatever the case may be. Now, this sounds kind of old school, but it worked really good for me when I was in 4-H. We had like one of those little boxes that held recipe cards and kept a bunch of index cards in there, and every time we went to a workshop, a record book training, hint, hint, after you go home tonight, write it down, a clinic for our livestock project, when we get back home or the next day at dinner, my mom would pass out index cards. There were 4 kids in the house, so she wasn't going to keep records for all of us. She'd throw an index card in front of each one of us and say, write down something or a couple of things you learned at whatever it was we attended last night. And so we'd put a date on it, write down what we learned, throw it in that little box, and then at the end of the year, when it was time to put together your record book, we sorted all those out, and everything that said Jody on the top of it came to my stack, and that's how I put my record book together. So again, I know that's old school, and maybe you can keep up with it some other way, but it worked for us.
Well, I can add one thing to it. With technology, we don't have a Texas 4-H record book app, but there is an app online that you can download that allows you to record, especially with animals. There's one particular called Animal Record Keeping. There's another one that's Texas 4-H Livestock Record. They're very similar, and you can go in and record stuff. So if you're while you're at the barn and you're on, Linder 611 or Linder 685, whatever it may be, and you're just recording, fed one bag or fed another one, that can keep up with it. Some of you all keep, records with receipts, and that's fine. But if you like utilizing apps and technology, there are a couple of them. Again, one called Animal Record Keeping, and another one was the 4-H Livestock Record or something like that, 4-H Livestock Record. So those are a couple of them. Again, ideally, I'd like to see it where we have one where we can type stuff in and then it would automatically upload into some data here where you can pull it up into your computer, but we're not to that point just yet. One of them does allow exporting, which is the 4-H Livestock Record. It does have some exporting, so you can pull it over anyway. So I just wanted to add that to it.
Sure. So whatever your system is, find something that's easy to keep up with, is not going to get lost, and that you can be consistent about. So again, whether that's on an iPad, a phone, on index cards, a calendar, whatever. Honestly, when you try to do a little bit here and a little bit there is when it makes it harder. So kind of come up with a plan that works for you and your family and try to stick with that. So easy and consistent are the keys related to journaling. And then that last piece, reflecting, that's really when you're putting your record book together. That's more toward the end of the 4-H year. But reflecting back on, did I reach my goals that I set at the beginning of the year? What did I learn throughout the year? What challenges did I encounter? So reflecting is more putting that book together and thinking back through your 4-H year. So hopefully you've already set some goals. If not, you've at least thought about some and go home and document those. Journaling should be happening right now while the 4-H year is going on. And then reflecting is what you'll start doing toward the end of the year, right when you're trying to put together your record book. Any questions on that? All right, again, for time's sake, we're going to keep on rolling. So this next page, I know it's super hard to see, but in your family guide, that's page 5. This is just kind of gives you a summary chart, a record book at a glance. And this is going to be real important for you to be able to follow as you're completing your record book and to kind of be thinking about it throughout the year. So there's 3 age divisions in 4-H. Again, juniors, intermediate, seniors. Juniors are 3rd through 5th grade. Intermediates are 6th to 8th. 9th through 12th are seniors. And so make sure you're looking in the appropriate column as you're get to the point where you're really trying to punch out your record book. But this is basically walks you through the different pieces of the record book and what kind of the page allowances are and information that you'll include. I'm not going to go through that. We're going to actually kind of walk through this on future slides, so I'm not going to do it at this very moment. But keep that page 5 handy. Star it because you'll want to go back and look at it. So the one thing that I will point out is just kind of the main sections on page 5. So the 4 pieces of your record book will be an checklist or a check sheet that everybody will use, a personal information page that everybody will use. Those two have not really changed from previous years. The 4-H story and photo portfolio, again, we've always done a story and photo portfolio, but some of the things have changed a little bit about that, and I'll cover that in a minute. And then lastly, the 4-H report form. Again, one of the huge changes this year is everyone is using the same report form. The last couple of years, there's been different forms for different age groups. This year, everyone's using the same report form. You're just gonna include a little bit different information in it. And we're gonna get into all that, so. All right, again, just real quickly, the check sheet is page 6, I think, in your family guide. Really, you can download this as a fillable Word document from the state 4-H website, and Kyle, I think, has it on the Nueces 4-H website as well. And as a member or family, you will just fill out the top portion. The rest of it is a check sheet for the different levels as it goes through competition. And so you really don't even have to worry about the bottom section other than make sure you have all the parts and pieces needed. So it's pretty cut and dry. The next page, the personal information page, is the next form that you'll have to do with your record book. Again, this is pretty similar as it's been in years past if you've done record books before. It's just gathering some basic information about you, your name, your address, I think where you go to school, and then it includes, you have to sign it as a 4-H member, a parent has to sign it, and then Kyle or someone from the extension office has to sign it. So again, it's just a basic form. You can download it as a Word document and fill it out online and print it off and you're good to go. So that, again, is pretty cut and dry, just fill in the blanks. So then we get to the 4-H story and photo portfolio. And again, you still want to include a lot of the same information you have in the past. If you've done a record book before, you want to include information about yourself. So typically you would do an introduction that says, you know, my name is Jody. I'm a member of the Lone Star 4-H Club. I've been in 4-H for 3 years. I have a younger brother and an older sister. My mom and dad were in for 4-H. Just kind of introduce your family, whatever the case may be. It's oftentimes fun for the judges to be able to read it, why you joined 4-H. Maybe mom and dad were in it, and so they signed you up, or you had an older sibling in it, or a friend at school encouraged you, whatever the case may be. Also, you'll want to talk about your project goals. So again, going back to setting those goals, you'll want to talk about what those goals are. And you'll really want to focus a lot of your story on your main 4-H project. You can include information about other projects that you may do in 4-H, but whichever one you feel like is your main project that you're strongest in is really where you want your focus to be on your story and photo portfolio. And then you'll want to touch on how 4-H has helped you become a better leader, how it's helped you set some goals or develop any new interest. You'll want to talk about goals for future years of participation. Maybe there's a new project you want to try, or you want to expand your current project area. So you'll talk about all of that in your story and photo portfolio. Again, they'll get more into the details of this at the spring training, but one thing that especially people just starting out sometimes fail to do, and although it kind of seems like a silly little thing, they really like you to title your story, My 4-H blank or whatever, My 4-H Food and Nutrition Story and Photo Portfolio, or My 4-H Goat Story and Photo Portfolio. You can put a subtitle if you want to get more creative and come up with something funny or catchy for a title, but they really want your heading, your title of your story to be My, whatever your main project is, Story and Photo Portfolio. We're going to talk about story and photo a little bit more because there's again a few changes. You really want to, you're going to have detailed out some stuff in your report form, but there's only so much space in that report form to talk about what you've done, what you've learned. So really use the story as your opportunity to get creative and tell more of your true 4-H story. If something funny happened to you throughout the 4-H year related to your project area. You know, or sometimes it's not always funny, sometimes it's something a little disastrous, but you were able to overcome those obstacles. So whatever it is that you want to share about your 4-H activities, this is the opportunity to do it in your story. You'll want to include new information, so every year you should write a new 4-H story. I will tell you from years of looking at these, it's extremely obvious when you start running out of time and you can tell that they went and pulled up last year's story and went and changed a date or two, but maybe they forgot a date or two down there and they're still referring to last year. So really take your time to do a good job on your story. It really makes a difference. And so you want to, honestly, it's better just to start from scratch with your story every year. I mean, maybe pull back in your introduction of you and your family, but your goals should be different every year. The activities that happened will hopefully be a little bit different every year. That funny story or obstacle you overcame should really be different every year. So use this opportunity to really refresh your 4-H year in your story.
And I'll add that in the training that we got from the state level related to story, that story is really about you this year. If the story can reference a little bit of previous years and kind of like over my years I've gotten to become this, but if it references a lot of previous years, it's going to be highly discounted. They've made it very clear the story is really focused on this year, this record keeping. You're going to have a chance to be able to provide information that Jody will show where it goes related to previous years' experiences and outcomes, if you will. But the story is about you, your family, and what you've done in 4-H this current year. And they have made, and they said it multiple times. If a story references previous years a lot, and the judging is going to, and the judging part of it is going to deduct points.
And we know that many of you are involved in lots and lots of activities. Maybe a school organization or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or youth group at church or sports or something. And it's okay to briefly mention that you're involved in those other things, but remember that this is a 4-H record book, and so they really want the majority of your story to be about 4-H. Occasionally you'll see those that say, I had fun, I raced a goat this year, but oh my gosh, I also play soccer, and that's so, they do 2 paragraphs on soccer and 2 more on Girl Scouts and 2 more paragraphs on some other event that they do, but really only talk about 4-H very shortly. So make sure you remember this particular record book is about 4-H, so focus on 4-H when you're doing your story. I think actually here's where we'll start talking a little more about the photo part of your story and photo portfolio. You'll want to, again, reference back to that page 5 as far as the length of story based on your age division and the equivalent number of pages and photos that you'll want to include based on your age division. Pull that back up and I'll look at it myself. And so when it comes to photos, if you are very computer literate and do a good job of integrating pictures within your story and throughout your story, by all means do that. If you're not so computer literate and you'll do better putting together your story and then adding pages of pictures behind your story, that's okay too. Captions on your pictures are not required, but I would encourage them just because it kind of helps the judges better understand what's happening in the picture. And make sure they would really rather have pictures that are action, doing something with your project, whether it's mixing up some recipe or washing your animal. They don't want all of your pictures just with you standing there holding your finished baked product or you holding that blue ribbon from your steer project or whatever. So really try to take a lot of action photos. Also, take pictures throughout the year. There's, occasionally you come across record books that, Molly is in the same shirt in all the pictures. So what does that mean? It came record book time and her mom went, oh my gosh, Molly, we didn't take pictures all year long. Get out there with your animal now. So really tried to take pictures throughout the year so that you don't end up in that predicament.
Or remember to change shirts.
But that's not really ideal. But another good source, of course, now that we have so much social media, and you know, if you're on Facebook or your parents are, the Extension Office does a great job of posting pictures from 4-H activities. The Stock Show does a great job of posting pictures of activities during the livestock show. So if you feel like you're coming up short on some pictures, go dig around and see if some got posted somewhere that you happen to be in. That's another you know, spot to go, a good resource to go to. So again, depending on your age division, so I'm going to just talk about juniors for example. The story or the written part of the text has to be a minimum of 2 pages and can be up to 8 pages. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine my 3rd grader writing 8 pages. But if they're a good writer, maybe they will. Did you have a question or you're excited about that?
Not excited.
Oh, not excited about that? Okay. So again, if we're looking at a junior, their photo should be equivalent to 2 pages, a minimum of 2 pages. So that maximum of 8 pages can be a combination of. So if you have quite a few pictures, if you want to have 2 pages of text, you technically can include up to 6 pages of pictures if you wanted to. But you just have to have a minimum of 2. So for, again, juniors, it's a minimum of 2 pages, maximum of 8. Intermediates, minimum of 4 pages, maximum of 10, and seniors, a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 10. So y'all just, again, keep referring back to this, because this is where things changed a lot, is minimums and maximums based on your age division.
So if you input pictures within your story, how does that correlate to 2 pages of pictures?
You're doing your best guesstimation of, is this equivalent to, if I were to have put all these on 2 pages, would have roughly filled up 2 pages. So,
And the rule of thumb that we approach from Extension is basically 4 pictures per page. If they're, I mean, sometimes we shoot down tiny sizes, so they're not going to, but our rule of thumb is you basically count if there was 2 pictures here and 2 pictures on the second page, those 4 account for about 1 page of it. So it's normally the size is, you know, the appropriate size. Some shrink them down way small, but really you want to have, it's overkill on a long story if you're having more than 2 pictures. You only want to have a couple of pictures, 1 to 2 pictures per page of your text that you're intermingling your story. Or you can put them all at the end, but if you intermingle them, I'm normally a couple of pictures per page.
good. Okay. So one big change, if you've done record books before, and especially if you've done a photography record book before, this is one of the big changes this year. Previously, if you did a photography record book, you added additional pages of photos, which were some of your photography entries, essentially. That you no longer add more photos. So the number of equivalent pages of photos is the same regardless of what type of record book you're doing. I guess, and we'll get into it. So again, for the newer families, one thing that we, well, you're gonna have to come tend to that because we're your power source. When you enter your record book, you actually select a category you're going to enter it in, and we're going to actually talk about the categories here in just a little while, but for the new families that have never done it before. So you'll pick, again, ideally your primary, your strongest 4-H project. So if you showed goats this year and you felt like you spent a lot of time on that and energy on your goat project, you'd probably enter a goat record book. If photography was your thing, you'd enter a photography record book. So again, we'll talk about the different categories here in a little while, but just for those that have done them before, no additional pages for photography record books like there was previously.
I just want to clarify it. So
Sure.
it's a maximum of, for seniors, 10 pages with, and that's including the pictures embedded in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
Yes,
like
ma'am.
Carl said, a guideline was like 4 pictures is 1 page, so that would be like 12 pictures embedded into that story.
Right, yes, you can do a maximum of 10 pages. So they want 6 pages, a minimum of 6 pages of text and a minimum of 3 pages of photos for a senior level. So that's obviously 9 pages. So that one extra page, if you want it, you could either stop at 9 or you could have a 10th page that either has a little more text or a little more photos or a little more of both. But 10 including both photos and story or text. Okay. Here we go. All right, we're going to move into the report form, and again, we're going to go over some of this quickly. This, if you want to follow along, page 7 in the family handbook. So, as I mentioned, there's going to be the same form for all age divisions this year. It's requesting the same content, but the number of entries that you do under each section is different based on your age division, whether you're a junior, intermediate, or senior. And then the report form will include the current 4-H year and the 3 previous calendar years. So, well, that's for intermediates and for seniors. So basically up to 4 years of information for seniors and intermediates. And for a junior, it would be the current year and the 2 previous calendar years. So up to 3 years. If you're just starting 4-H, don't freak out over that. You may only have 1 year of information to include in there, and that's okay. If you've been in 4-H for a while and you're super concerned about being competitive with your record book, you're probably going to have to spend some extra time documenting some of those previous years. If you've done record books in the past, again, hopefully you held on to those so you can go reference them to pull the information together. So 3 total years for juniors, the current year and 2 previous years, and intermediates and seniors, it's 4 years total. Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to visualize this form. You don't have it in here, right?
It's not in that, you can download it from the website, but no, it's not in the handbook.
So rather than including previous year record books,
Right.
it's gonna be incorporated into the recent.
One form, yes. So you will complete, this is a set of the forms, that's just the checklist and the personal information page. But rather than including, you will not include previous year's record books forms behind it. It will all go together. So the very first page, section 1, is related to 4-H projects and experiences. So quite honestly, it's a big white page. Seniors, this is going to look really familiar to you. If you've had kids in the program a long time, this is going to look really familiar to you. But so section 1 is related to your projects, and so you'll list what is your project, how did it change or grow. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail tonight. They'll cover it probably in more detail at the springtime. A lot of people choose to do a chart format here, so if your main project is food and nutrition, you would put food and nutrition and then list like your activities for the current year, and then the year before, and then the year before, and the year before.
And I'm just gonna throw this out, the reason for this is because I see a lot of experienced families, heads moving, looking down.
Cringing.
Yes. And I know, and so she already highlighted, but I'll say it again. No previous year's forms will go in that book. There's nothing behind this year that's gonna get inserted. They're forcing everybody to bring previous years into the forefront on the report form right there. And the question I had that I wanted to know so I could be able to translate it back to y'all is why? Why are y'all doing that? Why such a drastic change? And it is because as much work that is done to show growth and development as we get our kids doing more things, the most discouraging factor is as I have volunteers that go to a judging, a record book, district judging record book, they look and see judges that are not going back and looking at previous years for growth. They're basing their decisions on the competitive level at what they saw face value for this current year and did not take time to go back. So they have had so many complaints, including for myself, that said, you've got to make them go back and look. I don't like being second when we really deserve to win with all that work. When a judge said, well, they just need to do a little bit more here, and if they had gone back, they would realize they had. So that's what they've done, is they forced no more previous, and the reporting system is now right there to where you record all of it right there in front. So there's no, you have to see, you see it if you put it in there, bottom line. So that's where it's coming from.
So a lot of people will do a chart format here to be able to document your project area and then the 4 years worth or 3 years worth if you're a junior. But you don't have to do it in chart format, but several experienced volunteers in the room are really good at this. And again, I can point her out, I know.
We all are.
There's already fingers pointing at Cornetta. I would say come in the springtime and really hear their spill on how to truly assemble it to be able to present all that information in a fashion that you can get it all on here and make it effective. So, sure.
So basically, if you're in a senior division, but you're a freshman, you'd only have 1 year worth of data. You wouldn't go back to your previous years in intermediate, would you?
Yes, you would, yes. Because it's your years in 4-H, so you're looking for growth and change, yes.
So you're gonna have 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade if you're a freshman on that one page.
Yes, correct.
You can, up
Sixth
to,
grade,
yes.
yes. And it's up to. So again, new people that have never done it, this is the part I say, please don't freak out. Because your first year, just get it done. So I know y'all had, there were 2 questions.
Reiterate what I think I heard you
Okay.
say, make sure I understood.
Sure.
Okay, so in past years, we would take the old record book, the entire thing, and put it behind the new one.
Yes.
Not doing that anymore.
Correct.
So now, on this sheet of paper, we're gonna show stuff from other years.
And it's not just 1 sheet, it's 2 sheets, 3 sheets, so, yeah. But so you have more space, but you're going to summarize 4 years worth of information, or,
Okay, and it's okay if each year you're focusing on a different category or different, like.
right. So if you decide this year, I'm going to enter a horse 4-H record book. I've only done my horse project 2 years, but before I started doing horses, I also showed goats and I did the photography project, or maybe I did robotics or whatever. So, you know, you would, if you're adamant of doing it on your horse project because you feel like that's your strongest for this year, you would include just the years you've done it, obviously, just the 2 years, but you would probably want to note that, you know, I've only done this project for 2 years, so that they're not.
Or is a good way to incorporate why you transition, talk about I'm doing this, I had the opportunity. So in your story, you can find a way to plant that, because that's the first thing that they see and go through that story, and it can plant why you pick that project area and be able to give the depth of, you know, why I've made a transition over, or why it was more important this year. So you can find a way in your story. If you feel like if you switched and maybe your project area this year is not as deep as, you know, you've gone from shooting sports to poultry, and maybe it looks on paper shooting sports was deeper, but, you know, we chose not to shoot this year or whatever. You can find a way to explain that to where the judge would look at it and see that understand why, you know, your project area is.
And so, if it's a whole category this year, you would still mention your other years and different things you did, even though you're not showing growth in that category. Is that
Yes,
right?
because you can list up to 4 projects. So say this year you started doing archery and like that's your passion, you feel like that was where y'all put all your focus in this year. This is the first year we've had archery in Nueces County. Thank you, by the way. And so, so maybe your primary project, you're entering the shooting sports category for your record book. And so the first project you list is your main project. So you'd list archery, shooting sports / archery. Okay, and so you're only gonna have 1 year's worth of information. But you've done food and nutrition every year. So then the next project you list would be food and nutrition. Again, don't panic if you only do 1 project. That's okay.
You're listing.
Up to 4 projects and up to 4 years worth of information, or up to 3 years information if you're a junior.
So, I mean, the way to approach it is you're gonna list my project and then the years within that project, instead of going 2008, 9, and then list everything. You know, you're starting with the project area and then putting up to the 4 years under each one of those projects. The formatting will come later, but then I'm gonna get together and say, and then what we did last year, like I said, Jody's on the fact of how to do it, and I are on the finesse of how to make it be competitive and whatnot. But
So
ultimately,
At this point, just keep records on what you're doing. Regardless of what those projects are, how many years you've done them, keep records. And if you have past record books, keep those handy.
Well, that shows growth anyway, if you're adding another.
Adding projects, exactly,
a lot of people
exactly.
handing that around, they don't realize that is actually growth. You're going to a new project area, you're learning new things. That's correct. That's absolutely right.
So,
Sure.
so that's, all right.
Did you have a question? No, just stretching your arm, but Emily did.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is you're gonna take your previous record books that you have saved, and you're just gonna retype everything in.
Or cut and paste, or yes. Yes. If you can cut and paste, I encourage it. And speaking of cutting and pasting, so ideally, if you have the ability to type your record book and save it on the computer, that is hugely beneficial. One, for the judges trying to read it, but two, for you to have and keep the records and have for future years. But handwriting a record book is completely acceptable as long as it's legible. Okay? So. All right, so again, for time's sake, you can read through some of the formatting things related to the sections, but I'm going to keep rolling. So section 2 is the 4-H leadership section. Now this on the forms, so I told you section 1 was just where you talk about your different projects. Section 2 is related to your leadership experiences, and they actually have that one more of a chart format, so you'll fill out a chart versus having that big blank piece of paper staring you in the face. And so this is where you'll detail out what you've done to help be a leader in 4-H. Again, people just starting out think, well, we're brand new, we didn't get elected to club office. Leadership is not all about being the president of your club. Yes, that is a leadership role, but there's lots of other things you can do related to leadership. So anytime you can volunteer to lead the pledge at your 4-H club meeting, anytime you can talk to people at school or in the community about 4-H and promote 4-H, that's leadership. So even if you're young and you feel like you're not ready to run for an office in your club yet, read through this handbook and find some of the other ways that you can start gaining some leadership experiences.
One thing I ask y'all to do is, for those of y'all that don't know this, there is a very big difference between community service and leadership. And a lot of folks get lost up in putting a community service project under leadership because they want to make that leadership look big and fluffy, but it gets caught by agents like myself, volunteers that have years of experience. So learn the difference between a community service project and a leadership experience. You're going to have to decipher those and make sure, because it may not be clear to you, so I want you to learn it and we can help with that. But that's important to know right now what y'all are planning. There is a difference between community service and leadership.
So look at this second to bottom box here. Again, everyone, regardless of your age, is using the same form and the same chart, but based on your age division, you list up to 10 entries on one page if you're a junior, up to 15 entries if you're an intermediate, and up to 25 entries if you're a senior. So although the chart on here, or if you download the forms from online, has spots for 25 entries, if you are a 3rd grader, 4th grader, 5th grader, you will only use up to line 10. But you may only be able to list 1 or 3 or 5. Okay, let me know when you have a question, like wave real big, because I don't, or do you really have one this time? Oh, okay, perfect. I don't know if you're stretching your arm.
Can you type it? Can you like type your story or type something in it?
Sure, definitely. By all means. Just, if you're like me, you have to start early, because sometimes it takes a little while. Okay?
And related to those 10, 15, or 25, I know some are going to say, especially the senior age kids are doing a lot, is what I'm limited. What do I put in, or what do I, just know that you're in the same boat as everybody else across the state. Everyone's
They can only enter 25.
Top 25. I would be more than happy to have a list laid out in front of me. I can highlight 25. I can, whatever. You will have assistance from people, but just know that everybody else in the same boat. Everyone else should be doing this right here in their county, but they may not. But they're learning a whole new system. Okay, so we just have to conform to the rules, and that's the way it is.
Yes, ma'am.
The 25 entries, that's for the current year?
No, it's up to the same number of years. So 4 years if you're a senior or an intermediate, up to 3 years if you're a junior.
Okay, so the past 4 years, you picked your top 25?
Right. Yes. So if you are very active and hold a lot of leadership roles and do a lot of things, you're going to have to whittle down your list pretty heavily to the most important. And don't, you decide what's important to you. What's important to Julia is starting a whole new project with the Stop Show most important to her, or is, leading the pledge at a 4-H club meeting? Maybe that's something she feels very strongly about, and that's okay, so she'll make that decision. All right, so again, community service. If you've ever been into any of Kyle's other workshops, you can tell I'm just as long-winded as he is, so I'm sorry, we're trying to get through this. Community service, again, there's a chart that you'll fill out, kind of similar again. Junior age, up to 10 entries for up to 3 years, the current year and the past 2. Intermediates, 15 entries for the last 4 years, and seniors, 25 entries for the last 4 years. So you're gonna have to really whittle this down if you're super active with community service projects. If you're just starting out in 4-H, hopefully your club is encouraging you to do community service projects. If they are not, do some on your own. Or go talk to somebody in your club and say, I'd really like to organize a community service project for our club. And whether it's collecting items for the local animal shelter, canned goods to take to the food bank or a needy family, clothing or jackets, if you're in 3rd grade, you can organize a community service project. You might want to have some help from other people, but if you feel like that there's not community service projects happening in your club, either go do it yourself or organize it for your club, and then that's leadership too.
I can keep in mind as she's going through all of this, as it says, section 3 underneath her, 4-H. These are 4-H community service projects, 4-H leadership and training. These all are affiliated with 4-H. Don't go pull something out of what you did in a scout, and that's fine, because there's another section or whatever, but you don't pull that into this to fill it and fluff it. You've got to stick with the related to 4-H.
Okay, so again, the form it's filling in a chart. All right, moving on. Section 4 is other 4-H projects. Again, if you're just starting out in 4-H, more than likely this could very well be blank in this section. If you've been in 4-H a while and you've dabbled and tried out different projects, you might have something to put here. Because if you remember back on section 1, you could have up to 4 4-H projects. If you've dabbled in lots of things and you've tried out 6 or 8 different projects, this is where the overflow would go. So other 4-H projects. So these are your projects that are not your strongest projects. Maybe you tried showing chickens for 2 years and decided that is not for me and have moved on to something else. Put them here. Put that poultry project right here. Maybe you decided, did food and nutrition for a while and kind of dropped that project, or maybe you still do food and nutrition, but you do 4 other projects that you think are stronger, that you spend more time on. So, you can kind of pick and choose what you put here, but it needs to, again, be a 4-H project. But this is kind of the overflow if you are super active and have tried out a lot of different projects.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
They tell me, I think on that one page, you list your projects up to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And say you only had 4 projects, it was better to, maybe do 2 there or 3 and then put 1 or 2 on that blank, so it wouldn't be blank.
Yeah, there's different trains of thought on that. And so if you feel like you've done 4 projects and they're strong and you want to put them all in section 1, go for it. I would if you're not putting anything here, I would write, I'm not involved in more than 4 projects, or I intentionally left this blank. Some people think, yeah, I wasn't that strong in that, or I did 1 photography entry for the NCJLS homemaking division, but I didn't really do a whole lot related to photography. I just kind of did that one. So it's not so strong. So maybe you would just list 3 on page 1 and that 1 extra back here. There's different trains of thought on leaving that blank versus just pushing one of your weakest ones back here. So you kind of have to make that decision.
So, for your main project, you're supposed to do, I guess, 6 major items.
Learning experiences, yes.
So in this, if you didn't do your 6, that would fall under this?
Yeah, so, when we get into the definition of a 4-H project, technically you're supposed to have 6 learning experiences. So think about, I keep referring to food and nutrition, but, a learning experience doesn't have to be that you entered 6 different competitions. If you learned how to use a measuring cup, if you learned how to go purchase ingredients at the grocery store, if you sat down with mom, grandma, dad, or grandpa and they talked you through a recipe, those are all separate learning experiences. So quite honestly, it's super easy to get 6 learning experiences. I mean, you're probably doing it and not even realizing it. So yeah, my example of, I snapped one picture and entered it in the NCJLS photography contest, but I didn't go to any photography workshops. I didn't really learn anything about my camera. I didn't enter the 4-H photography contest or do anything above and beyond just snapping that one picture and entering it. That's probably not a very strong project, so you'd want to include it there.
So using archery as an example, would the practices count as a learning experience?
Oh, by all means, yes.
So each
And
subject
y'all are
practice-
probably learning, having 20 learning experiences at every single practice. I mean, you're learning about aim, you're learning about safety, you're learning about holding the bow, you're learning about stringing the bow, you're learning, you know, there are so many things happening probably at every single practice. You far exceeded your 6.
Gotcha.
So, all right, now have I thoroughly confused everyone? Okay, so again, I told Kyle, I was only gonna be 45 minutes and I'm already pushing an hour. 4-H recognition and award. So again, it's a chart and the forms, very similar. 10 entries for juniors, 15 for intermediates, 25 for seniors. Again, using multiple years, 3 years for juniors, 4 years for the other 2 age divisions. And focus on any recognition and awards that are important to you as the 4-H member. It doesn't mean you had to get a ribbon. If they recognized you at your 4-H club meeting for participating in something last month, and that was important to you, list it. You decide what your important recognition and awards are. So, again, this is kind of one of those personal preferences. You decide what was valuable to you as an award or recognition and list it. When you first start, again, you may struggle to come up with the very many, but as time goes on, I promise, you'll have way more than enough and have to whittle it down.
And the 4-H banquet, every child that does a activity in 4-H, at the banquet, we have hundreds of certificates that we're handing out. Not everybody comes, because not everybody's applied for what we call the STAR awards or the awards that they have to interview for, but they're certificates, and then we end up mailing them out. So that certificate highlights what they got recognized for. So that right there lays it out for if you did the candy and yeast spread or whatever. That is a certificate of recognition, which is an award at the county level that basically highlights everything that child did under our view out of the county office. So that right there is a great guide for you to look at if you're struggling with, well, what did they do? If your child was important and did some things and got not just called up because they were actually at the event, but let's say they never came to the candy and yeast spread show, they turned in an entry in, they didn't come, we still send a certificate for that actual event, and at the end of the year, at the awards banquet, we give a certificate that has every activity that they did as well. So there's 2 ways to capture that. Just pass on any. Go ahead.
Okay, was there a question back there?
What is it called?
What, awards and recognition? Yes, ma'am.
So, if we're doing the record books for the first time, but they've done the projects previous years, we can list that?
Yes, yes. If this is, yes, so you've been doing 4-H work, you just haven't done a record book. By all means, anything from those previous years, as long as it's within the 3 years or 4 years, by all means, list it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here, I'm a little conflicted. So you could potentially have like a lazy senior come in, right, and just do kind of the bare minimum, but pump their 23 awards and recognition or 23 leadership experiences or whatever from all these previous years. So, I mean, shouldn't there be more of an emphasis on the current year?
There, you do list the year in the chart.
Sure.
So it would be part of the evaluation of judges to see that this student, whether it's on the leadership page, the community service page, the awards and recognition page, if they're a graduating senior and other years they have 10 items from each year, or I guess you don't have space for that, but only 1 or 2 from this year, it would probably be evident that maybe they weren't as active this year.
So when you say pick your top 25, we should really still be focusing on the current year and then maybe just fill in the bottom.
I would make it a balance. would be my recommendation. Somebody else
That's what I
may
think
have.
to find out too.
It-
And we've already, I feel like with the new record book, well, it's already done. We went through and we projected what she was going to do, and that's where I'm gonna leave with Kyle tonight. But I think to, lean toward this year, and I was wondering if that was the feedback that y'all got. Make it a little heavier on this year because I wanna focus on growth.
Right.
So maybe if I have 25 options, I'm gonna put like 7 or 8 from this year, and then 6, and I'm not real good at math, so I would have to have that thought out ahead of time.
But right, you do want to show growth through your entire book. So
ninth grade,
leadership,
fifth
community
grade,
service,
10th
yes.
grade, 11th, and then 12th with an
But I wouldn't necessarily do 20 of them the current year and then just 1 or 2 from the previous years. I
Unless
would,
you've been in 4-H only long, and actually, you know, in 4-H 2 or 3 years, it may be significantly heavily weighted on the last year or 2 because of what you've been in. But a one that's been for a while, Ms. Golden, I'm gonna tell you that you're right, the emphasis needs to be on the current year and weighted. And so those that have the years of experience, if it comes to me, I'm gonna look at it and kick it back to y'all and say, on a competitive level, for someone that just recently been doing a book on a second at state, y'all are still new to this, but y'all have a lot of experience, so I'm gonna kick it back to y'all and say, this is a lot of work, you know, y'all know what it takes. Let's rework this to where it's more heavily weighted on this front year. So I'll take a look at those, but they definitely don't wanna start strong and end weak, because it's not gonna have a good impact on those, on the judging end of it.
Well, it also seems like this new format is sort of forcing everybody to do the same record book every year.
What's that?
Like, to be competitive, it's really sort of forcing you to always be clothing and textiles. for the
your
record.
division, your category,
Yeah,
yeah.
because if you're trying to show growth and strength,
Right.
it's kind of tying your arms. You
Well,
got,
on
you're
the
gonna,
success of on a competitive level, correct, but that's what she references, there's 2 different things here.
Sure.
The record keeping alone is one thing, but to get competitive, you're absolutely right. You really wanna try to focus on 1 or 2 project areas that you do more of and grow in that, because it just has that effect on down the road.
that seems really limiting to the kids a little bit, I think. Like,
And if you really start building on a second project or third project, I mean, I've seen kids switch record book categories as long as, again, to me, you always wanna pick your strongest project. As much as I love record books, don't make your 4-H year geared to your record book by any means. Do it on your projects. So, you know, there's different, again, trains of thought on that, but I think record books are great, but go enjoy your 4-H project. Keep some records, document some stuff, but don't try to gear your whole year based on making my record book.
We'll have another meeting about formatting and like the meat and potatoes, I'll have longer to talk internally with state code and kind of figure out formatting, but again, we're just, you know, we'll talk about that and gear towards that formatting of the competitive level in this sport.
Okay, non-4-H activities. This is where you get to spotlight sports you play, student council, church youth group, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all those other organizations that you're involved in. It's limited to 1 page, but this is where you'll highlight it, all in section 6. Again, it's just a big blank piece of paper, so use that space as you wish to highlight other activities that you do outside of 4-H.
Same thing, 2 years, 3 years total, 4 years total.
Yes, same format there. All right, if you'll flip to page 11 in your handbook, your family guide. So the last page of the report form, this used to really only be required for seniors, and it may seem a little weird for a 3rd grader to be doing this page, but when you start thinking about it and answering some of the stuff, it'll make sense. It's a college and career exploration page, or that's the section. It's the very last page of the report form. And so the very first thing on the form is to ask a question. As of today, what career would you choose? If I asked my 7-year-old today what her career choice would be, it would probably be like riding unicorns the rest of my life. Okay, I know obviously that's unrealistic. Don't tell her yet. But if that's what your career choice is as of today, that's what you write down. But then you need to document why that interests you and what you've done to try to learn a little more about that career. So whether it's, I've talked to somebody that's done it, I've looked at something on the internet, I've read a book about it. Obviously, the older you get, it needs to be a little more in depth. Like, I've researched some colleges, I've researched these career choices, I've interviewed the local vet, because that's what I want to do. I've gone and talked to a teacher. My mom is a teacher, and that's the career field that I'd like to enter. So, again, the judges will know the age of the 4-H member, and so obviously age appropriate, but the closer you're getting to graduation, hopefully you're spending a little more time and energy researching colleges and career exploration. We fully understand not everybody is going to college, and that's okay. So if your career path is to graduate from high school and become, you know, whatever, a welder, you've learned that trade from dad or uncle or whoever the case may be, write down what you've done to explore that career field. So although, you know, college is in the title, it doesn't mean there's an expectation that everyone's going to college. But talk about what you plan to do with your life beyond high school and 4-H. So again, just kind of make it age appropriate. And there's more details about that on page 11 of your guide. All right, the score sheet, again, you'll just, when you get to it, it's actually in there. It's just changed the format a little bit, and it's going to encourage judges to hopefully provide more comments and feedback, but we'll talk about more of that in the springtime. Again, record book covers we're not even going to talk about tonight, because we'll talk about that in the springtime. And the general guidelines, that's all in that handbook. And this is getting into the details of what size font do you use, what type of paper do you use. Today, worry about keeping records, setting goals and keeping records. We'll get into all that in the springtime. So, just to recap the big changes. Photography books include the same number of photos as everybody else in their story and photo portfolio. The old report forms will not go in your new book. They won't get added behind. You may glean information off of old reports to put into your new report, but they will not be included in your book. And then the categories, record book categories have been updated, so that's going to be kind of the last thing that we cover, is the record book categories. You will find those on page 16. Okay, thank you. Page 16 in your handbook.
And this is going to affect some. There was some categories
Yes.
deleted or eliminated, some were modified. One that highlights a companion animal and one that has a companion animal. It's dog.
Yeah, I'll cover that. So there's a short list of all of them on page 13, and then more detailed definitions of what is included in each, starting on page 16. The big changes were, they've cut out used to be a record book category for recreation. That is no longer there. So if you've done a recreation record book in the past, find something else. They've merged together health and personal safety. Those used to be separate. They just expanded the definition, which I'll let you read that if you're interested, the science, engineering, technology, and math, or STEM category. And then there used to be a record book category called companion animals, and they took that out but added dog care and training, because they were finding out pretty much everybody that did companion animal was dog related. So, so those were the big changes to the categories if you've done them before.
Keep in mind that these are record book categories to enter record books. There's project areas that extend past this, but these are categories for record books to enter